Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta, and I'm recording this video to compare two methods for obtaining Twitter data uh, and getting it into a database and using it to generate some insights. Both of these methods have advantages and disadvantages, which is why I want to compare the two. The first method is going to involve using a free computer program called R. You can't beat free. And it requires you, on the other hand, to work a little bit in the backstage nuts and bolts of an API, application programming interface, and to obtain a few codes. So it's a little tricky there. Not too bad. On the other hand, we've got a standalone program that integrates actually into Microsoft Excel. It's called NodeXL. And you don't have to figure anything out about APIs in order to obtain Twitter data. For both, you do need a Twitter account that's going to be connected to this work. But whereas R is a free, as in free beer, project that you can work with, and you can work with it on any computer, Linux or Windows or Macintosh. NodeXL only works with Windows versions of Microsoft Excel, and it costs money. So NodeXL, on the other hand, has the advantage of being user-friendly and also graphically very interesting and useful. So let me show you a few things that you can do very quickly with R and with NodeXL. Let's start with R. I'm going to assume you know how to download and install the R program. If you don't, we can very simply head over to R project and Google that, and it'll be sending you to rproject.org where you can download there. And there's a download link on the left. There's a nice package on top of that, which is called RStudio. And what that does is it creates a consistent environment no matter what computer you're on, and it allows for some color coding, for error checking, and some windows for organizing your results and your databases and things like that. Just Google RStudio, and they will try to have you pay a little bit of money. But if you find the right link, which is simply RStudio and not any of its right there, not any of its additional packages, right? You just want RStudio Desktop. That's absolutely free, and it works with our project. So I'm going to assume you've installed that, but you need to then connect R, this program, which looks like this, a beautiful space where you can type in commands in the upper left. You will get text results in a console in the lower left. You can have information about your databases in the upper right, and you can have information about your organization of your files and lovely graphic plots in the lower right. It's a lovely environment, but you need to connect it. So in order to do that, assuming you have a Twitter account, you would head to a web page called developer.twitter.com. And once you head there, you need to find the developer portal. And if you don't have a developer account, it's going to ask you to apply for privileges. Okay? But once you've done that, and you feel like you're all set here, and you have a dashboard, you then need to generate an app. And so we can go to Overview under Projects and Apps. And there's a little button down here at the bottom that says Create App. So we're going to create that. And I'm going to literally generate a temporary app for us. So I'm going to call this educational use app, and you're going to have to enter some data. That wasn't too hard though, was it? And it's going to generate, by the way, it's going to generate details that I'm about to erase as soon as I'm done with this video. So it's going to make some temporary access codes for you. Okay, and it's all about security. I'm going to make this a little bigger so you can see it easier. You don't want to let anybody else see these things. I'm going to regenerate these keys, okay? And I'm going to do that as soon as I'm recording the video. But for now, I'm going to take this information and I'm going to cut and paste it into a notepad file. First, my API key. Then, my API secret key. These are what I'm going to need in order to connect R and Twitter. Okay, and I'm going to take that bearer token and I'm going to copy that too. Okay, that's the longest one of all. These are codes that nobody else should know so that only they can use that API channel to get access to Twitter. It's to keep hackers from messing with you. Okay, so now the last thing I need to do is set up my app and get something called these additional tokens. So in order to do that, I'm going to look, this is called Educational Use App, right? That's its name. And I'm going to go to the option that says Keys and Tokens. So I already have the API and the API secret key, but I'm also going to need an access token and an access token secret. So I'm going to hit Generate. And here's my access token, and I'm going to copy the whole thing. And that's what it is. And then I'm going to take this access token secret. Recognizing again, I'm about to delete this, so this can't be used by anybody, even though I'm about to use them. And then I'm going to click yes, I saved them. And then I have done everything I need to do over at Twitter. And now I'm going to head back over to R. And I'm going to show you a very quick and dirty program that will do a couple of searches and generate some data and play a little bit with some sentiment analysis for it. So for this program, this script here, which I'm running in a cloud version of RStudio, I'm going to need to use certain packages. They are called Rtweet, Sentiment Analysis, dplayer, ggplot2, and Snowball C. So Rtweet is what's going to collect the Twitter information. Sentiment Analysis is the name of the package, this add-on to R, that is going to perform a sentiment analysis. It's going to compare words in dictionaries to see whether positive valence or negative valence words are used, positivity or negativity. dplayer and ggplot2 are these two programs that allow a person like you or I to create some nice graphics. And Snowball C is a program that is a little addition that some of these packages rely on. And so I need to install them to make another program work. So in order to install those, you'd simply go to Tools and click Install Packages, and then you'd type in the name, for instance, ggplot2. And then you would select that, and then you would hit Install. Now, I've already installed them, so I don't need to do that, but that's what you would need to do. You need to install them, each one in turn. Here there are 5, and then you would need to activate them. Say, I want you to pay attention to these packages by using the library command. Library is the command, and options in R are inside parentheses. So it's saying, yep, I want you to find something in the library. And what is the package? Oh, it's Rtweet. Oh, it's sentiment analysis, and so on and so forth. Okay, so the second piece is that you need to connect your work to Twitter. So you're going to go from this program over into Twitter and look into their data, and they're going to say, who are you? What's your password? So for that, you have your API key, which you got at developer.twitter.com. What is the API key? Well, I just recorded it here. Here's my API key. I'm literally going to copy it and paste it here, okay, in a series of commands in which I'm creating an object in R, this container of information. We could call it a variable, that is going to take on a certain value. What's on the right is the value. What's on the left, the thing that the arrow is pointing to, is the name of the variable. So the API key, that's the name of the variable, and then it's telling the computer what the value is. It's a line of text, so I'm putting it in quotes. The same thing for the API secret key. And then the same thing for the access token. And then last but not least, the access token secret. Okay. Whew, almost done here. Then it's going to, in lines 15 through 20 here, it's going to create a token. It's like a key that goes in a lock, okay? It's like a special card that you show the bouncer at the club. It's a password, right? Basically saying, hey, let me in. And here it's already filled in lines 17, 18, 19, and 20. The consumer key, the consumer secret, the access token, the access secret. Those are equal to the names of these things that we created up here. API key is up on line 9 and on 17. On line 18, we have API secret key, which is also up in line 10, and so forth. There's just one piece that you need to fill in from developer.twitter.com, and that's when you've signed in and you have your developer portal. And that is in the projects and apps, the educational use app. Oh, that's the name. It's looking for the name. And you have to provide it in the variable called app. Okay, app is educational use app. That's the name I gave for it. Now I have access. That wasn't too hard. It was a little funny looking, and some folks might be a little odd about having such weird looking passwords, right? And 4 of them. But that's what you have to do. It's the price of something that doesn't cost you anything, okay? But now we can start to have fun. We're going to use the package called Rtweet, which allows you to go into Twitter and grab some recent results. We're going to be using the 1.1 version of the API, which is the one that you don't have to pay a lot of money for, or the one that you don't have to have a gigantic, terabyte hard drive to store data for. It's good for when you're starting out, or when you have a focused research question. So I'm going to show you 2 commands in Rtweet that are useful. The first one is called search tweets. Okay, the command search tweets has a couple of options. Well, what are you going to search for? You're going to search for a query. It could be that you're interested in Beyonce, so you type in Beyonce. It might be that you're interested in people talking about cute cats, so you type in the phrase cute cats. For this example, we're going to work with something political. So we're going to talk about the term Biden, as in Joe Biden. Might occasionally get something about how I've been Biden my time, but that's really not the spelling, so Biden should be safe. What you do is you enter that as the first option. Q for query equals, and then in quotes, your search query. the term you're looking for. And then the next option is separated by a comma inside the parentheses, and it says n equals 1,000. And what that means is that you want 1,000 cases. And why no more? Because if you work with more cases, you're going to run up against large delays. The computer is going to choke on a large amount of data. Again, if you are really well resourced, this is not a problem. But if you don't have much money, you want to limit your search because you're going to have a computer that can't handle too much data. So a limit of 1,000 is good. The second thing we're going to do, oh, and by the way, and then we use this arrow, right? And the arrow says, let's name that as this thing, the result. Let's give the result a name so then we can work with the results, okay? And we're calling it Biden search DF. And we've connected them with little underscores instead of spaces because named objects in R all have to be one word. So the underscore is like a space, and I'm calling it Biden search DF because it's going to result in a Biden search database is what we'd usually call it, or you could call it, if it was on a spreadsheet tab. But within R, it's called a data frame, and it's a classic two-dimensional spreadsheet, essentially, of results in which variables are going to be in columns and cases, your up to 1,000 cases, are going to be in rows. So it's going to give me up around 1,000. Sometimes it's a little lower, sometimes it's a little higher. Search results. Each of those is going to be a row, and it's going to give me all these variables about them. It's going to be really neat. Then I'm going to go look at something else. I'm going to look at a Twitter list. Now, if there are people with Twitter accounts, like C-SPAN has a Twitter account, those Twitter accounts can create lists, which are lists of people that fit in a certain category. I'm using C-SPAN's tonight because C-SPAN is an authoritative organization. It's a cable TV program that is all about national politics and particularly focused on the US Congress. And the owner user here, using the command lists statuses, okay, we're going to have parentheses for the options. The first option is going to be who's the owner of that list, who's the one who wrote it. And it is C-SPAN is the name of the Twitter account that created it. What is the name of the list? For some reason, that's called a slug. I don't know why, but we're going to have a comma and then a new option where slug equals members of Congress. And that is the name of the list itself in Twitter. So it's going to list the most recent status posts by all the members of the US Congress who have a Twitter account, which is just about all of them. And it's going to create its own data frame, another database, which is going to contain a lot of rows of recent posts, very recent posts, because the list is used a lot by members of Congress. And for each of those, it's going to have a number of variables too. Then I'm going to run some sentiment analysis. I'm going to ask it to look using the command analyze sentiment, which is part of the sentiment analysis package that we loaded in line 3. I'm going to use the command analyze sentiment to look in that data frame for a particular column that is called text. And you might be able to guess what that is. It's the text of the tweet. And for both the Biden search data frame and the US Congress list data frame, I'm going to ask it to, for each of those, look at each of the words, compare it to a list of positive and negative words that are in a dictionary of positive and negative words, and then generate positivity and negativity scores. The sentiment analysis package will do that for a number of different data dictionaries, different dictionaries of positive and negative terms. The one I'm going to use is called Sentiment GI. So if I type in dictionary and then continue on, I notice I have some options here. One of them is dictionary GI. It's a command that will actually show, if we wait for it here we are, it's going to show what the names are of these positive and negative terms. So you can actually take a look at those. So negative terms include abandon, abject, abrupt, absurd, abyss, accuse, addiction, agonize, alarm, aloof, angry, amiss. Oh boy, that's just the A's. Whereas if we continue down, we see ample, amplify, angelic, anoint, athletic, attachment, attune, attain, assent, apt, avid, benign, blissful, boost, bravery, all words that the dictionary assumes to be positive. And by the way, the GI dictionary was created, it's a general index by psychologists at Harvard, and they verified a number of people agreed that these were positive and negative sentiments. So it's kind of a cultural dictionary in a sense. What am I going to do? I'm going to take, once I get those, the sentiment analyses, I'm going to then bring together the data sets of that sentiment analysis and then the Biden search, and I'm going to just stick them together so it's all in one data set. And then I'm going to plot a number of things. I'm going to plot with a title of the Biden dataset sentiment. I'm going to plot a histogram using a ggplot command. I'm just covering this in general here, right? Where I'm setting the alpha levels, which is an opacity level to 0.05. 1 means you can't see through it. 0 means it's entirely invisible. So it's going to let us see through to the grids in the back. Bin width means, because positivity is either 1 plus 1 for totally 100% positive, all the words, to -1, which is all the words being negative. So between that, that's just a units of 2, right? From -1 to 0 and then up to 1. So we're going to create bin widths for the histogram of 0.05. And then we're going to do the same. You can reproduce this ggplot command by looking at what's here and typing it in your own R script. Okay. Finally, we're going to think about kind of two-dimensional relations. So where a histogram is just going to tell us, how many positive comments and how positive are they? How many negative comments are there and how negative are they in how they're feeling? Both for recent posts by members of the US Congress and recent posts by everybody who's using the word Biden on today, April 12th, 2021. But the final pair of commands that we're going to use are, again, for the Biden data set and for the US Congress Twitter list data set. We're going to ask it to take a look at sentiment and graph it across time here, because it turns out that the column created at, and you indicate a column by typing in the data set name, which is Biden data set. That's what we created in line 33. And then there's a column called created at, which is a timestamp, right? Saying organize it then, and then plot all these dots, which are going to indicate when it was plotted on the y-axis and whether it was positive or negative sentiment on the x-axis. Okay. Finally, we're going to take another piece of data in that database, which is called Retweet Count. And it's just a variable that's returned by Rtweet. How nice. It tells you how many retweets that post has gotten. And then we're going to graph that by sentiment. So this is cool, right? There's going to be a y-axis, which is going to indicate how many retweets a particular tweet got, which is that someone else is reposting that tweet and sharing it to their friends. Could be all the way from 0 to whatever the highest number was for this set. And then we're going to figure out when there are a lot of retweets, does that tend to be a negative post that gets retweeted with negative sentiment, or is it a positive post that gets retweeted? And again, you'll notice we're running this command twice, once for the Biden dataset and once for the US Congress dataset. This one here that was created in line 34. That's a really simple set of analyses, but it's going to give us a beautiful result, which is a set of plots. It's going to give us some sentiment information and add it to what Rtweet would give us, and it's going to save it for us up here in the upper right as a data set that then we could export to another program, we could play with it, we could look at other features of the data set, all these things that could be done. You ready to see how it works? It works like this. Let's run this region. And let's run the whole thing. So we go to code, run region, run all. And you're going to see it works actually really quickly. Look, it's downloading. It's downloaded everything. And now it's running through an analysis. It's going to be very quick at this. Okay? And it's going to give us a lot of results. So let's take a look at what we've got over here. I'm shifting. Yeah, let's shift that a little bit so we can take a look at what we've got. Up in the upper right, we've got data sets. First of all, we had a set of search results that gave us 90 variables for each of the 893 results it turned in. Our maximum was 1,000. It gave us 893. The Twitter API is like that. Similarly, when we searched for recent posts in the members of Congress Twitter list, that is members of Congress who have Twitter accounts, we got 197 recent posts, and it gave us the same 90 variables. Okay, and by the way, when you click on any of these, like the Biden search data frame, this is literally what we'll get. We'll get the text of the post, we'll get the screen name of the person who posted it, what device they posted it from, the created at, when was it made, all kinds of stuff. Right? Is it a retweet or is it itself? How many times was that Twitter post retweeted itself? Did it use any hashtags? Great stuff in there. We're only beginning to work with that. But for each of these 893 rows, we then said, let's create some sentiment. So this sentiment analysis is going to give us the word count. So we'll note that the fifth line in has a word count of 7. It has a sentiment GI of 0.14285714, which is resulting because it found that 0.1428 or 14.28% of the words that were used, right, which is 1/7, right, of the words that were used coded as positive. 0.000000, none of them coded as negative. So you have a net sentiment GI score of the positive score minus the negative. So that comes out to net 0.14285,714, 1/7. We can then go over to the search frame here for that and look up the 5th row. Let's verify it. Let's look at that text. That 5th one. Whoops. And that says Biden admin to scrap police. Biden admin to scrap police commission link. And the link has got to be the last word. So actually it might be the hashtag. One American News Network. Okay, so we can verify that they match, and then they're joined together in this thing that's a Biden data set, which is taking the 90 variables from the original search, the 14 variables from the sentiment, and turning it into a combined data set with 104 variables. Whew. We do the same thing For the US Congress, here the screen names are all representatives, members of Congress, right? Okay. And then it is generating some plots. Now, when you look at plots, there's a little blue arrow. If you scroll back, you can go from the last to the first, and then you can scroll back through. Here's a beautiful histogram, which is showing that for Biden, the tweets about Biden have this sentiment that is the modal category is neutral, with some on the right side, which is going up in sentiment value toward the net positive, and some of them going to the net negative. But fairly evenly balanced, right? So let's now look at the histogram for Congress members when they are posting. Okay, again, the most common result, the modal result, is right around 0, which is pretty neutral content. But look at this. This is a skewed distribution. It skews toward the positive. What can we say? We can say members of Congress typically give out happy words, positive emotional words, and a smaller set of emotional words that are negative. It is much more common, at least on this day, April 12th, 2021, for there to be posts that are mostly positive. It would be interesting to see how that changes during a scandal, wouldn't it? Now we can look at, as we move over time, right? So we're talking about for, these are the tweets about Biden, that there are so many of them that when we said we want to get 1,000, what we got was in 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes worth of data. There's a lot of data out there in the world, so you just got a glimpse of it. And what this is showing is that as you move up in the minutes, what is the tendency toward positivity or negativity? Looks fairly equal to me, even across time. There doesn't seem to be a very clear trend, but it's good to know. For members of Congress, that is, tweets by members of Congress, the time frame is different because they're a little bit slower than just anybody who is using the word Biden in their tweet. So this is what 15 minutes, 45, an hour and 15, an hour and 30 minutes. Not bad. And what it shows is that tendency to have positive sentiments, more dots on the right of that 0.0 line. Finally, this is a negative relationship, which is shown by this blue line, which is the best fit line. It's using a linear model. And what it is showing is that to a small extent, but a noticeable extent, the tweets with negative sentiment are getting more retweets. Particularly, there's a couple up here that got a lot of retweets that are very negative. Whereas positive sentiment, that includes the word Biden, just doesn't get retweeted as much. Does that work for Congress? Yes, it does. It's the same relationship. Tweets that are negative get more, especially a couple of them, get a lot of retweets, whereas ones that are positive just don't reach those meteoric heights. Now we have some insights, we have some data, we can look at that data and use it for wonderful purposes, and that's just great. Let me very briefly show you then, compare that to NodeXL, which you can buy at NodeXL.com. Right. So how do you buy it? A NodeXL Pro, even if you're an academic, you have to pay $69, and that's not just once, it's for a year. It's not perpetual. You can get a year's worth of permission to use this if you're a student for $39. Oh, and there's NodeXL Basic, which is free, but it doesn't have these capabilities that I'm about to show you. So once you download this program, you literally can just go to type in NodeXL, assuming you're in Windows, at your Start menu, and it will start the program. And it literally runs automatically within Microsoft Excel. You're seeing some information from an Introduction to Sociology class of mine. But now it's going to load up. It's going to take just a moment to start up. But once it does, you'll be all set. So it'll automatically update information, and then you'll be able to go. And the rapidity with which you'll be able to go might be a little astonishing to you. Do you remember in R how much you had to write code, and a lot of that code had to include some information. So now it's going to load up a series of tabs. You can already see them starting to form down at the bottom. It wants you to read this information. You don't need to see it. And we are actually almost ready to go. What you're going to see over on the right is a panel that is very important. This is going to be graphical output. And you're going to see a tab up at the top called NodeXL Pro. And the neat thing about NodeXL Pro is that once it opens its ribbon, it's like a whole new program that is running inside Microsoft Excel. You literally can import, let's say from a Twitter search network. Let's just do Biden tonight. We can show who was replied to or mentioned in those tweets. Let's limit it again to 1,000 tweets. And we have a Twitter account, but haven't authorized it yet. So it's going to ask us automatically to authorize it. And watch how quickly we can get that information. So I click OK, and it's going to open up a browser page in a window. It's going to ask me to authorize an app that will do all the background work for me. And this is its PIN number that I need to type in to give that access, 580-1820. So I literally type in 580-1820. Don't worry, your PIN will be different. And now it's getting a list of tweets. It's getting page 5 of them, page 6. You can see that down at the bottom of this box. There's a progress bar. It's examining relations. And it's going to provide you something a little bit different. It's going to provide you network information that's quite easy here. Okay, so if we look at vertices, the vertices are going to be the people who are out there tweeting about Biden. And we can find out that we collected information on 1,478 of them. Okay, and they're involved in these tweets. Then there are going to be the edges, okay, and that's going to include relationships here. The person who is writing and the person who is being referred to or written to. It's going to talk about what kind of relationship there is. And then it's going to include the actual tweet itself. It's going to separate out the URLs in tweets, all the domains that are used, all the hashtags that are used. That's handy. And then it's going to give you the date of that, the date, the time, loads of information. If there's latitude and longitude, which there usually isn't, it would include that. So it'll tell you what the language is, all that beautiful stuff. But watch what happens next when I click Show Graph. I only have to press one button. And it's going to show me a picture of all the communications that happened. Now that is really busy. So we could do a few things. We could create Harel-Koren fast multiscale, which is a visualization that separates out connections that aren't close to one another. We can include pretty graphics options in which we curve them. so that we can follow them easily, or even put them in, let's say, medium bundles, so that when they all travel together, they'll come together like bundles, cables behind your computer. So when we refresh that, it'll take a little bit of thinking time, but now it starts to become a little bit more useful. My favorite, oh, look at that. Isn't that beautiful? Now it's showing you that there's one big clump of communicators here and a couple of subsidiary groups. My favorite visualization option is using this group option. Let's group by cluster. That is, you look how closely they are connected to one another. And we could put all the neighborless vertices, all the isolates in one group. And it's going to calculate the clusters. And now it's created a series of groups, which is really cool. And then here, excuse me, under layout, we can go to layout options, and we can lay out each of the graphs groups in its own box. You're going to be really interested in seeing how that works, okay? And let's just watch that. Just wait a moment. And we'll hit refresh graph. It has to think. And now, oh wow, it's organized them into little groups and separated them out by color. And so you can begin to see there are lots of little groups that are talking about Biden, a relatively smaller set of groups of, say, 5 or so, and only a few very large conversations in which many people are either communicating with each other fervidly, many people communicating, or there's one person up here in the upper top, the purple, who is a communicator who is being heard by others. There's so many more options for NodeXL that I want to stop here for the night, and I can't possibly consider them all. It's a wonderful visualization tool. It's a lot easier, but it has beautiful options. You can't really expand the options much yourself. R can. It costs you money here, and R doesn't. The sky's the limit if you come up with creative programming options in R to extend graphs outward. You won't be getting histograms here, at least easily. But it is a great way to make a very impressive looking thematic description of the character of the communication that's going on about a subject. So that is collecting Twitter data with R and with NodeXL. One is quick, another one's pretty involved. One is free, the other one's expensive. But they each have their place in data collection and data management regarding the social media platform Twitter.